Welcome to the Building Pathways to Healthy Minds podcast, where we share real-world strategies to nurture children as they grow. Today, we are diving into the subject of how to cultivate nurturing homes that are emotionally safe and full of empathy and communication across all age levels. I am so excited about this subject and so excited about this first podcast. And the panel of experts and colleagues that I have with me here today. Each of them has devoted their lives to children's safety and mental health. And all of us at some point have worked for Child Builders, which is a nonprofit in Houston that seeks to promote mental health and prevent abuse by empowering children, parents, and teachers with assertiveness skills, emotional control, empathy, resilience, and the ability to resolve conflict non-violently. So pull up a chair, cup of coffee, or in your car, wherever you are today, and please enjoy our podcast. Without further ado, we are going to get started. We are joined today by my good friend and executive director of Child Builders, Amanda Sarusian. She has been executive director at Child Builders since 2017. And when I was in the office all those years ago, she was program director since 2007. She has a master's in public health with a focus in health behavior, health promotion. And for this podcast, kind of important, she has two sons, Ashton, who's 21, Corbin, who is 20. And above all, she is striving to make this world a better place by ensuring children are respected, protected, and nurtured. So excited to have you, Amanda. We're also going to have Janet Posmentier, who is just a lovely person, and also an award-winning author, curriculum developer, trainer, child advocate, specializing in primary prevention programming. She's created and successfully implemented child abuse prevention, relationship, parenting, mental health, trauma, and youth suicide prevention education curricula for children, youth, and adults. She's the co-author of a book on early childhood development, which hopefully we'll be able to get into a little bit today. I'd love to know more about that. And she's been affiliated with Child Builders since 1992 when she created the Parents Under Construction program. And that is a program that teaches children and adolescents the parenting skills they need for the future. And today, Janet continues to serve as a consultant and trainer for Child Builders and other organizations. And again, for this podcast, we're so excited to have her because she has two daughters and three grandchildren. So I'm hoping we can get into that. And I realized putting this together that Amanda and the person I'm going to introduce next, which is Gretchen, are holding down the boys' side of this, and Janet and I are holding down the girls' side. So daughters and sons. All right, so Gretchen Lash, our last person who's going to be talking today, Director of Program Services at Child Builders. She's worked there for over 15 years, and she is wildly talented, so knowledgeable. If any of us have questions, we usually run straight to Gretchen, and she figures something out. And she has three sons who are 13, 15, and 17. And I know she has education degrees, and is it public school counseling? Social work. All right. So this is our panel. We are so excited to have you with us today. And like I said, I hope you have a nice warm cup of coffee or you are enjoying the day, and just thank you for inviting us in. So today's topic is cultivating nurturing homes for kids of all ages. So what do we mean when we talk about nurturing environments? What do those look like in our home?
The first thing that came to my mind was an experience I had before I became a parent when I was working, and for some reason I went to meet with somebody in their home, and I noticed on the coffee table there were lots of beautiful items, breakable, fragile items, and there was also a toddler, a crawler, a baby in the house. And I also noticed on this coffee table there was a ruler. And so I said to the person I was meeting with, who was the parent of this baby, I said, oh, these are so many pretty things. I said, what's the ruler for? And she said, "Oh, well, that's for when the baby comes to try and get to the pretty things. I just take the ruler and smack them across the fingers.
Uh,
Well, they'll learn not to touch the pretty things." And I was horrified because I realized that even though this was a very nice person and she was a parent, she did not have the basic knowledge of child development that was necessary for all of us as parents to be able to provide a nurturing environment for our child. I I wanted to say to her, "Well, how would you feel if every time you saw something that was pretty and you wanted to touch it, somebody appeared out of nowhere with a big stick or a baseball bat and cracked it across your fingers?" Yeah, you might learn not to touch anything, but you would also wonder about that relationship between you and that person. And again, here we're talking about the parent who should be the primary nurturer, inflicting some pretty significant pain. Um, and I would also wonder what how that would affect long term the relationship between the parent and the child. Can I trust my parent? When is the parent going to hurt me again? And also my ability as a child that age to be able to explore freely so I can learn about my world and be go out into the world with courage and confidence rather than fear that pain is going to come just simply because I'm curious about things. Curiosity is the baseline for intelligence and success. So I thought all these things, and I thought, gosh, if she only knew not only about child development, the need for the child to explore and all that, but if she only knew that she could simply just put the things away for now, and then when the child is a little bit older and had language and other skills, be able to bring them down and introduce them one by one to the child and say, look at this pretty thing. This is something we use our eyes to look at because it can break. And we were just going to look at it. And so slowly introduce, put it back up high on a shelf until the child is able to next time, oh, and this time you're older, big boy or girl now, and you can hold it very softly and gently in your hands because it can break. And so, slowly introducing at different stages of the child's development so that the child learns about the pretty thing first with its through the eyes, then through the hands, then developing the confidence that I can hold pretty things and keep them from breaking. I'm a big boy, girl, whatever. I think about that all the time as why it's so critical for developing a nurturing environment.
Yeah, I love that. I think you had so many good points in there. The whole knowing the developmental stages of children. We talk a lot about that in Child Builders. That when we know what we can expect and what the normal way that children develop is, then we can make decisions that are wise, that are nurturing, that are kind. And I love too how you said you can, once that communication is open, then you can explain more and talk to them more. But knowing a baby can't do that. We're not going to expect that from a baby, that we're going to be able to talk and tell them not to break something, right? So I also heard when you were talking a little bit about having empathy, putting yourself in the child's shoes and saying, how would you feel as an adult, right? If someone just came along and hit you when you're wanting to do something, right? That's not really going to help us. And so diving into that topic of empathy, what are some ways you've seen through the years with your kids that you've been able to have empathy, maybe some examples that you've seen in your homes, and how do you cultivate that as a parent with your children?
I'll go ahead and go first. I feel that that starts from day one. Having the ability to always try and put yourself in the other person's shoes if possible, especially with a young baby. What does the baby need? One of the greatest myths that we have in our society is don't go to babies when they cry because you'll spoil them, which is a terrible, harmful myth because babies are crying simply because they have a need and they have no other way to express the need. So, understanding how important it is to respond to the baby's need. It can be hard to figure out what the baby needs, especially when you're a new parent, because they need a lot of different things. And sometimes they just want to cry. And that's really, really hard, especially when it goes on for 2 hours. That's really that's when you need somebody to be empathetic to you and come take that baby from you. But empathy, it starts right there in understanding, how important it is to respond. Because if you do that for the child, then the child will begin to trust and can learn to develop empathy for other people as well. So
I
I
love that.
feel that's a key point.
Yeah, I think so often you might hear, "Oh, babies know how to manipulate us," or if you go to them, they're going to learn that they can cry and get your attention. But I think when you're looking at it with empathy, you're saying, "This is their way of saying something's going on." And I need to go and I need to find out and be curious. That's a big part of being a parent, right? Being curious. What are they trying to tell us? And that keeps going on. There's so many times with me, I don't know if I mentioned this, but I have a daughter who's 7, and I still struggle with that sometimes, maybe even more so than at that baby stage where it was like a little easier to comfort, just hold. And sometimes I forget that she's not trying to do something to manipulate. There's something going on, and I need to be curious. What are some other ways you all have seen that in your growing children, from young toddlers to middle schoolers to even high school and after?
Yeah, how about you, Miss Amanda? Yeah.
I, yeah, I go about because my kids are 20 and 21, and we had a very good example of empathy that I need to practice. Actually, my older son had an accident, and it was his very first accident. He's been driving his car since he's been 16, so for 5 years he's been accident free and he was very proud of his driving skills and all of that. And one day he came home and he was just not himself. He was just not himself, and he wouldn't talk, but it was very obvious to me that something has happened. And I kind of asked him, is there anything you want to share? How are you feeling? How was work? We were just trying to have a conversation, and he was just like pacing back and forth, and he really wasn't willing to talk. And it's very difficult when you're, grown children, young adult children are not talking. And I knew at that point he wasn't ready to talk to me, so I just let it go, and I said, let him have some time to himself and, get himself together, and, I'll try it again. So later on, I went back to him and I said, you seem kind of, frustrated. And I was just wondering if there was anything you wanted to share with me. And he literally burst into tears. Like he had tears in his eyes, and he's like, I don't know. It's just like, I don't know. I just did the dumbest thing, the dumbest thing. I just backed out of the parking lot and just like backed into this guy. And just like, I- I've been driving for 5 years and I've never had an accident. And I don't know I mean, he started telling, and I was just watching him beating himself down to, just feeling horrible about himself. And so I let him just go at it as much as he could because I think the venting was the best part of it. So I was just like trying to be curious. So I think mine started with being curious about his behavior as soon as he entered the door and noticing, being vigilant about the fact that there was something wrong. And when he wasn't ready to talk, I allowed him to have his space, because I don't think we would have gotten anywhere at that point. But I also was very curious and I wanted to, empathize with him and figure out how he can open up and talk about this situation. So anyways, when he talked, and I listened, um, that's the time that he doesn't want to hear from me. It's like, what? You had an accident? Oh my God. So, the cost and
That's usually our first reaction, right? It's like,
yes, like how could you do this?
how?
Like
Why?
not pay attention to the, backing. So all of that, it can come in your head in different situation. And I just looked at him and I said, I know how it feels. Like I've been there, it's just I've had a couple of accidents and you just feel really dumb. It's just like, how could I make this mistake, not pay attention? And, I'm glad you shared that with me. And, are you safe? Was the other person safe? So just your safety is more important. How are you feeling about this right now? Just frustrated with myself. Just, so it was really a good opportunity from him going, not talking to actually just dump it in. And it just, I was glad he was doing that. So anyways, we had a great conversation, so as I said, just being vigilant about the behavior of your children at any age, it's infancy to adulthood. Be curious about how they are feeling, pay attention to it and allow the time for them to process it. And then if they are ready to talk, let them talk. And to me was my perspective at that point was to understand how frustrated he was with himself and how stupid he felt about it. And that's exactly what he said. And acknowledge that, validate that feeling. Yes, I've been there. I felt stupid when I backed into someone in a parking lot. I understand it, but I'm glad you're safe. I'm glad he's safe. And one thing that I shared with him at that point is like, it's also important for us to see from mistakes that happens, what do we learn from it?
Yeah.
So I told him, as Oprah says, life is whispering in your ear. So this was a little whisper in your ear saying that maybe you need to be a little bit more careful because this was not a major accident, but it could have been a highway. You could have been hurt. Someone else could have been hurt. So it's just a whisper, in your ear that and so the conversation went really well and we figured out how to fix the car and insurance and all of that. He learned a lot from that little
That's so
mistake.
good for me to know that, even a 20-year-old, 21-year-old, you're still that parent who's saying, hey, it's okay. We can still learn from this, as we talk about in Child Builder sometimes where when the price tag is small, where it's not a major thing yet, right? We're still guiding our children into learning from their mistakes, even at 20 and 21. I think too, also, I feel like just when you were talking, I was thinking about like, what are the enemies of me having empathy in parenting? What is it that stops it? And so often for me, I think it's my own anxieties. That's why we want to jump when our kids say, hey, I made this mistake. And we go, what? Why? Yeah, we instead of just having that calm, empathetic response, which is, oh, I'm so glad you're okay. We jump to our anxiety. Our anxiety is about money. Our anxiety is about time. I think time for me sometimes is a big enemy of empathy, where it's like, I just don't have time right now. So how do we face that as parents? How do we look those moments in the face and go, hey, I'm still going to have empathy even when I'm feeling this much anxiety, so much anxiety, so much time pressure. I have to get to work. I think we're all, running around. So how can we incorporate strategies in our homes to help that?
So I want to jump in here and I've been thinking about what has been shared so far. And there are a couple of things that relate, Priscilla, to your question. So, enemies of empathy are often, like you're saying, our own anxieties, our own stresses, our own thoughts about what should happen or how our children should behave, which may or may not be rooted in reality. They may be rooted in our own experience of childhood or what our parents expected, or anxiety about, if I bring my child to my parents' house, then what kind of reaction are my parents going to have to me about my child's behavior and to my child? So there's a protective instinct there too, that it makes it very complicated. But I think Janet's story about the friend that she visited who was leaving her crystal beautiful things out and training her child not to touch them with sort of a Pavlovian, if I hit you, you will stop point of view. That also comes from an anxiety of, I have to create this certain look in my house. This is what it means to be a good housewife or mother, or this is what my mother had in her living room. And this is the expectation that comes from somewhere. And now my child wants to do this. And this is the only way I can think of to make it all work together.
Keep it all together.
It's these competing expectations that aren't always about what's going on with your child. And that can be very, that can be extremely overwhelming, no matter what walk of life you're on at a given moment. But then, Priscilla, you were also talking about just sort of the stress and the time and in this moment, I'm anxious about my child getting hurt, which goes back to what you said before about, in order to have empathy for your child, someone needs to have empathy for you. You need to have empathy for yourself. You have to give yourself permission to take space and prioritize your needs as well. So, one thing we say at Child Builders in a lot of our webinars, and Amanda reminded me about this yesterday too, is you cannot pour from an empty cup. Which means if you are depleted because you're thinking about the expectations placed on you from all of these external sources, including making sure you're the perfect parent to your child, which you want to be, no matter what, that's true. And you're not taking care of yourself and refilling your own resources, which could look like getting enough sleep, which is a challenge to parents of children of all ages. We struggle to get enough sleep for all kinds of reasons. Getting a healthy nutrition, getting enough to eat, that, just having the time to make yourself a meal and sit down and eat it, especially when you're caring for a tiny little person, a toddler who's, I know toddler moms who are eating carrot sticks and what else? And yogurt snacks and puffy things, eating toddler food during the day because that's what's available, and there's not really time to sit and eat a proper adult meal. So all of these things are required for you to be able to be an empathetic parent. So I would say that all falls under the umbrella of self-care, which it's easy to say, oh yeah, whatever. There's so many other things that matter before I'm going to talk about self-care, and I'm going to talk about doing my nails, and I'm going to talk about going to the yoga class. But it's absolutely a critical thing that needs to become front and center if you want to be able to create the environment that you envision to be nurturing for your child.
Can self-care even just look like for me yesterday, I had to take a minute to self-check, why is this getting to me? Why am I feeling at the top of my threshold of anxiety with my child's reactions? So taking that moment, it doesn't have to be something extravagant, right? It can just be a check-in, like, why am I feeling this pressure around my in-laws? Or why am I feeling like I don't have time for them to throw, my child to be sad? What's going on in my world, and how can I stop? And what are some ways we can do that?
I really like everything I'm hearing, and I agree, of course, with everything. I just wanted to add that just like anything else that gets damaged or broken down, or wear and tear, whatever, our brains, our mental health go through a lot, especially as a parent. I think that one of the things I say a lot is that nobody prepared me, even though I had this background in child development and child therapy and all of that. Nobody can prepare you for what it's really like to give birth, for one, and then to raise a child. And some of that is traumatic. Some pregnancies can be
Absolutely.
traumatic, some births can be traumatic. I had, luckily, relatively normal births, but they were still traumatic to me because there was so much pain involved. And then the things they do to you after that you didn't know they were going to come in and do to you, to your body, and things like how your body changes, and how your energy and the time that you have. And I remember my older daughter, when she gave birth to her first child, she did have complications, but I remember she was in the hospital and we were visiting her, and she burst out into tears and she says, "What have I done to my life?" She's like, life, and she was like, and I think we all feel that as, first time parents, maybe second, third, fourth, fifth time parents, because it's huge seismic change. And so most of the time we adapt and we do well, but we also live in very, very stressful times. And many of us don't have the support that we need. Some of us are single parents, some of us don't have family or good friends nearby to help us. And sometimes, and this is critical to have that, you find your people and surround yourself so that they can help you when you need it. You can help them when they need it. But overall, remember that if it gets really, really bad, if you are feeling very, very depressed, if you're feeling thoughts of harm towards your children, etc., please reach out for help. Know that you're no different from anybody else who's been through that, and how important it is, to receive that help. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you, that you're weak or you're, crazy or anything like that. It just means that you've come to kind of a point where, without somebody helping you, be it, friend, neighbor, whatever, or a professional, if you need to go see a professional, that's a gift that you give yourself, so that, as we were talking about, you can begin to nurture yourself again, and so that you can nurture your children the way you want.
Yeah, I love that. It reminds me of the video with Brene Brown talking about empathy, where she says, it's like you're in a deep, dark hole, someone climbs down. We need that. I know for me, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, the last few days are just a great example here. Snow days, and we've had sickness, and just even with those things, they seem small, but when they pile up, it's just too much. And I know what doesn't help is someone saying, well, if you would just do this and this and this and this, it would be fixed, right? It's someone coming alongside me and saying, yes, I've been there as a parent. I've been overwhelmed. In fact, I was talking to Gretchen yesterday, and I meant to ask, like when we first got started talking, I wanted to say, hey, do you ever feel like when your kids are sick that you're just like, you don't even know what to do anymore? You're so worried about them and you don't know, and you just kind of lose it, So we want to hear from other people that it's okay. We've all been there. And that's, I think, what we're saying today, too. We all have these enemies of empathy. But if we can take care of ourselves, if someone else can come alongside that in us in the dark hole, maybe we can climb down when our kids are in a dark hole, right? And come alongside them. It just takes us being aware that that's what we need and that's what our kids need as well.
And Priscilla, I think the self-care that we are all talking about here, it's so important. Um, Personally, for me, I've been terrible at it as a parent. And I think that comes from your background. I grew up, at age 9, we lost my mom. And I became one of those people in the household that had to take the responsibility emotionally, physically, in every way. And I always had to make sure everybody is okay and everybody's taken care of. And, it's just, I took on that responsibility. I had amazing father and I had amazing brother as well, but that role just came very, I don't know, quickly to me. And I really had to reflect on that as I became a parent, is like, how do I, if I want to create a nurturing environment in my household, how do I nurture myself?
Mm.
And how does that nurturing works for me as an individual? And for me was connecting, channeling my energy into things that are important to me, and for different people is different thing. For me was my faith, and I was able to channel my energy in that way, and uh, just feel really good about putting my time and energy in that. And also it was exercise. I remember at sometimes I had to go to exercise at 5 o'clock in the morning because that was the only time that I could exercise. There was no other time because after the kids came home, it was just not possible. So making time for yourself to find what really, as Gretchen and I were talking about, making sure your cup is full, what makes that cup full? Is it exercise? Is it meditation? Is it prayer? Is it your faith? Is it learning more knowledge, studying, whatever that is? Is it music? Whatever, find that fills you up. And when you nurture yourself, you can create that nurturing environment, because as we say in Child Builders, we always want to connect with our kids. We want our interactions with our kids to always be positive. Not always. I mean, we're gonna stumble and fail at some points, but we want to be in those positive interactions with our children so we connect with them. And as Janet early on was talking about, parenting and the mental health of our children in future is connected, is intertwined. So when you know what a huge responsibility you have to impact their mental health in future, you can start with yourself, nurturing yourself, creating those nurturing environment. One other thing I wanted to mention, enemy of empathy, as Priscilla, you were mentioning. I was thinking of my example with my older son. It would be assumption and judgment, right?
Mm.
So as he walks through the door, he's just, not paying attention to me, or grumpy, or distracted, or not even say hi or something. Immediately I could get defensive and say, what kind of a behavior is that? Where is your hello? Why are you, what's the big, long face? I could have gone there, easily.
Absolutely.
And especially those days that you are distracted, so many things is happening, people can go through financial problem, marital problem, family problem. I mean, we have things that can pile up in a day and just make you reactive. We're
Yep.
not going to go through all of that. So mine would have been making an assumption that he's just being rude and, disrespectful, and could start the conversation by saying, why are you being rude? And
Right.
his answer would be, ignoring me or lashing out and saying something. So that was one thing that I wanted to mention. It was the assumption and the judgment, judging the person immediately as they are sharing something. And
That is
that's
good.
going to just bring this wall that you just broke that connection, and they're not going to talk, and the trust is not there, and that nurturing environment is destroyed,
When it's kind of going into, we talked about an emotionally safe home, that's what that's doing when we take the time to check our emotions and then check in with our children about how they're feeling emotionally. And yeah, I love that instead of us jumping to the negative, or you jumping to the negative, you decided, hey, something might be going on here. I'm going to take a second. Guys, we had so much content during this first session that we realized we probably need to create 2 podcasts out of this one day. So we had so much fun, and we talked so much empathy, connection, communication, that we just kept communicating and communicating. So we are going to stop this episode here, but don't let that be the end of it. Come back for episode 2, where we wrap up how to have nurturing environments in your home, to create empathy. What are our enemies of empathy, and how can we overcome that to really connect with our kids and open communication from childhood all the way into adulthood? Please join us for episode 2. We are honored that you took your time out today, wherever you are, and we hope that you stand strong, stay fit, safe, and we will see you next time. Bye.